Joe, now to a look at United States politics from abroad. Joining us now is BBC New York correspondent Nick Bryant. The Washington Post compares Nick to a modern-day de Tocqueville who's writing about what he calls America's decline in his new book titled When America Stopped Being Great, A History of the Present. Nick, good morning. It's good to see you. I think this is a fascinating conversation because there are a lot of people watching who understand the flaws of our country but still believe its economy and its innovation and its universities and its culture are the envy of the world. So where do you see the decline? Where did it begin, and what happened recently that led you to this conclusion?
Willie, it is great to be on, and let me assure you from the outset, this is not some European hit job on America. This is a love letter to this country, a love letter that becomes a lament. I've got an American daughter. I still cry at the end of Hamilton. I still have great hopes for this country, but it worries me to see this chronic state of disunion, how the United States has become an oxymoron, a misnomer, how this country has become a continent shared by warring political tribes, how American exceptionalism, which was a positive when I grew up, has become a negative for many people around the world, something we associate with mass shootings. Willie, I came to America on the eve of the Los Angeles Olympics. I was 16 years old. I got to witness this extraordinary summertime of American resurgence. After Vietnam, Watergate, the Iranian hostage crisis, America got its mojo back with that extraordinary modern-day gold rush in Los Angeles. And later that year, of course, Ronald Reagan won re-election with the ringing slogan that perfectly captured the optimism of America. It's morning again in America. And the book really traces how we went from that to the American carnage of Donald Trump's dystopian inaugural address to the mass mourning of the coronavirus outbreak and the culminating moment, the storming of the Capitol on January the 6th.
Nick, boy, you just pulled a lot of thread there, talking about the recent history of the United States of America, starting with Vietnam and what happened in terms of people's trust of government, continuing on through Watergate. But was there, do you think, a pivotal moment politically in the mid-'80s when Newt Gingrich began to emerge as the leader of the Republican Party in the House? And it seems in retrospect that his philosophy was it wasn't enough to defeat your opponent, you had to demonize your opponent and destroy your opponent. And that seemed to have altered the mix of politics somewhat.
Absolutely, Mike. There was a crucial generational shift in American politics. The greatest generation who had fought together on the battlefields of Europe and Asia had the torch wrenched away from them by the baby boomer generation, whose formative years had been spent in the culture wars of the 1960s. That was such a key moment. And it coincided, of course, with the end of the Cold War. The Cold War had imposed a discipline on American politics. In the post-war years, you had patriotic bipartisanship on so many things. In the 1960s, Republicans and Democrats came together to pass the great Civil Rights Acts, the 64 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Acts. That started to fray, that started to fall apart. Newt Gingrich realized that the Republican Party was in the minority and it would stay in the minority if bipartisanship continued. It would always reward the party that was in power. And so he decided to turn the Republican Party into an opposition party. And that really was a key milestone moment in this path towards polarization.
Nick, Eugene Scott with the Washington Post is here with a question for you. Eugene?
Hi, Nick. We've seen polls and surveys over the past year say that the United States' reputation and popularity globally has declined in the past several years. What are some of the little known or underappreciated consequences you've seen abroad of that shift?
Look, one of the most notable shifts is how these days when you travel to America, it feels like time travel. If you come from Asia or Europe, you come to airports that are decrepit. You travel on an infrastructure which is decrepit. As I said, American exceptionalism. We all wanted to emulate America. When I was a kid, we saw your country as having the highest standards in the world. But now we see how a broken economy has led to a broken politics. You know, Clinton spoke about building a bridge to the 21st century, but that bridge was a bypass for so much of the American heartland, so much of the American Rust Belt. We see this infodemic in America, this failure to even agree on basic facts. the results of a clear-cut election. And we look at events like January the 6th, the storming of the Capitol, and they just seem like culminating moments. They shock us, but they don't surprise us anymore. Mm-hmm. And that is tragic in terms of America's global reputation.
Totally agree. The book is When America Stopped Being Great, a history of the present. Nick Bryant, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And still ahead, amid a Justice Department